You're listening to The Audit, presented by IT Audit Labs.
Hello, and welcome back to The Audit by IT Audit Labs. Nick and I are very excited today to welcome guests from Team Spilt Beans, who won the DEFCon30 Vishing competition black badge. Please help us in welcoming to the show Jennifer, Matt, and Sean. Hi, guys.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for being here. Jennifer, do you want to kick off introductions?
Yeah, that sounds good. So, hey, I'm Jennifer, and I was the team captain of Spilt Beans from DEFCON30. I've been practicing social engineering for about 10 years now, and you can follow me on Twitter at _jackoff, JACOFF. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Matt.
Hey, I'm Matt Benkert. I've been pen testing for about 3 years, and I've been in security defensive side for probably 5 years before that. Relatively new to social engineering. Kind of Jennifer forced me into the competition. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's about it. My Twitter handle is at BNGRSEC, Bangersec. Sean?
Hey, I'm Sean Hopkins. I've been in security for about 10-ish years now. I'm a red team lead over at a Fortune 50 company, and I like to social engineer, did break-ins and stuff like that in the past, and you can find me at _CHOP, SEAHOP.
Great. Thank you so much. We're very excited to have you here. So let's dig in and let's talk about DEFCON 30. It was this past August in Las Vegas. Was this your first DEFCON?
Yeah, so for me, this was the first DEFCON I've ever been to, which was pretty exciting to walk away with a black badge. I'm going to say it was definitely unexpected. I know, Sean, I think you'd been there before, right?
Yeah, I've been to one previously, I think 2018.
Yeah, it was my third DEFCON.
So this one, did it blow your mind? I was very impressed by the production. The previous year with the pandemic, it felt a little bit smaller and intimate being in a hybrid, both virtual and on site. So this year, I was so impressed with the graphics, the music, the parties, and all the different tracks you could take.
Yeah, I had an amazing time. I know I don't have anything else to compare it to, but I do want to give a shout out to the social engineering community's founders, JC and Snow. And the Twitter is at SEC_DEFCON. But I mean, their whole community was executed flawlessly, as if they'd been doing it for years and years. It was amazing.
I'd agree with that. The experience and being in the social engineering area was so exciting. Just to set the stage for people listening, you walked in, a large meeting conference room was dark, and you actually got to watch the Vishing competition live. Tell me more about the competition. How did you guys decide to enter? What did that look like? And then what was the actual experience of Vishing people live in front of a huge audience?
Yeah, so I'll say it was not a last minute decision to apply, but I did definitely strong arm the other two guys, Matt and Sean, into joining me because I was a little intimidated to do it by myself initially. But we made a YouTube video as per the requirements of the admission, and were selected to be one of the competitors, which was really exciting. From there, we had a few different requirements in different sections of the competition. The first stage was that the judges/contest organizers would give you a company. So every single team received a target company, and that was basically all they would give you, just the name of the company, and that's it. And from there, you had to put together a report that included a series of objectives that the contest organizers identified ahead of time. And this could be things like what operating system does the company use? What's the name of their shredding company? It's a large variety of objectives, but you put those together in a report. You submit it to the judges, and you also create a list of phone numbers and targets that you would like to call for the live calling section of the competition, which happened actually at DEFCON. So aside from that preparation work, then it brings us live to the DEFCON portion, where we had soundproof booth, which was so incredibly helpful given the amount of people that were there in the room, in which you'd place live calls to the people you had previously identified and hope they answered so that you could give them your pretext and get even more objectives. Does that make sense?
It does, and it sounds incredible.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
Yeah, that's maybe a question for Matt or Sean. I'm also curious, like, what your prep work looks like. Like, as far as tools goes, like, what kind of OSINT are you using? Do you guys have any goals? Like, are you trying to get something specific for that report, or what does that look like?
To some degree, actually, Matt had a novel find, I think, for the entire engagement, like amongst all the teams. Actually, Matt, you want to go ahead with your DNS thing you found?
Yeah, I found one of the requirements was to determine what antivirus the target company was using via OSINT, which is kind of hard to do. But I found a Recon NG module, which is I believe it comes standard in Kali Linux, that you can actually recursively search a company's DNS servers for specific like AV vendor strings, and then it like kind of put together an assumption that, oh hey, this lots of hits on, I don't know, McAfee owned domains, they probably use McAfee. That was one of the more fun ones to get.
Yeah, and I do want to say I forgot to emphasize the fact that in this entire competition, we were only allowed to use open source intelligence, otherwise known as OSINT, gathering in order to obtain all this information about our target company. We were forbidden from having any direct contact with the target company, which includes things like calling them, emailing, or physically visiting or otherwise communicating with them in any manner, aside from the passive OSINT ahead of the live calling competition that happened at DEFCON. So, and Matt's technique was probably my favorite and definitely the coolest from my perspective. Sean?
Yeah, so the rest of the stuff that would go into a normal pen test, like looking up subdomains and things like that, didn't really apply to this competition, which was unique for me because that was always part of it, was like hunting for bad certs or subdomain takeover type of things. But this was purely a phone call, which, the normal pen testy type of searches don't, always equate to this type of competition.
And this is why I'm fangirling so hard over having the opportunity to have you guys on this podcast. This is epic to hear what you were able to accomplish and the methodologies you used.
Yeah, thank you so much. About the methodologies, actually one of the judges, Chris Kirst, wrote a really cool article about, I guess, every single OSINT technique that was used by the various competitors in this competition. And I'll send you that link, but it's definitely a really cool read.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. We'll also include that for our audience so they can check it out.
So you guys created the YouTube video. You created this report. You haven't had any contact yet with your company. And then the next step, you show up to DEFCON and then you start making phone calls. Can you jump into that a little bit, what that looks like? Or you go up on stage and, I wasn't there. So I'm curious about how this is looking.
So this is a good time to say that the judges this year gave us a huge twist, which ended up being super fun. We didn't know it at the time until we arrived to DEFCON, but actually, I think there was a total of 16 teams. Matt and Sean, do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And there were only a total of 8 target companies, which means that 2 teams had the same target company, and we didn't know until we arrived at DEFCON. And so what they ended up doing is a live coin toss, kind of akin to football, with the 2 team captains or team members to flip a coin to see who had their section first. So who could make their live calls first? And this was really important for two reasons. One being the time of day. So the time that we were making our call just happened to be around 5 p.m. on the East Coast on Friday afternoon. And so it was either going to be at like 4:30 p.m. or it was going to be like 5:30 p.m. And so we didn't know when our time zone was going to be based on this coin toss. And on top, and another reason why this is super important is because we don't know if our opponent has the exact same numbers that we found, because the DEFCON organizers didn't give you any people to call directly. This was all in your lane to figure out who you wanted to call and identify them ahead of time. So there was a potential that, the other team also found the same list of people that they were going to call. And if they call them first and might spook them, then it kind of it would mess up the potential for us. So that was a really fun twist to find. I know I didn't want to go up and do the coin toss. I was trembling, and honestly,
you didn't want the pressure.
I have goosebumps for you, even though we know how this ended. It's just the way you're setting the stage, like this is already a big enough feat, but then to be sharing and then have the time zones to contend with, holy buckets. Awesome.
Yeah, Sean, do you want to walk through what that was like?
Yeah. So I fell on the sword for the coin toss and lost it for our team. And then the guy who won the coin toss, he went first, of course, because, end of day, you definitely want to kind of get a better time. And thankfully, he went through his sales pitch type of, campaign. And luckily, none of his phone numbers lined up to ours, but he didn't have many people pick up. So in our minds, I'm like, oh, man, what if no one picks up? I mean, they're already not picking up for him. That could possibly be like what happens to us the entire time. Luckily, it didn't turn out that way.
And how does that not shake your confidence? I think that's one of the ways I'd say you guys are incredibly resilient and masters of your craft. You had all these other things outside of the competition to contend with, and you still nailed it.
The trick is to go in with zero confidence.
Great approach. I like that.
One of the things that definitely helped us while he was on his call and we were waiting kind of off to the side is we had our list of, 20, 25 phone numbers. And one, we were checking every phone number he called. We were trying to highlight on our little clipboard if he called it. But also, Jennifer and I were sitting there and calling our numbers. And if they were to hang up or if they were to answer, we would immediately hang up, and then highlight it or circle them and say, hey, these people answered. We'll call these people first because we know they might answer again. That way we didn't want to waste time kind of going down the list top to bottom, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Good strategy and amazing teamwork to be doing that. Really, you said you fell on the sword with the coin toss, but I think you made that opportunity work to your advantage where most people would have felt pretty defeated.
It did work out with how it worked out, but also, having to watch someone, you watch that time click down, and it feels like it takes forever on the outside, especially when you're next. And all you can see is getting closer to 5 o'clock on a Friday. And, just had to get over that part of it. But that hurt a little bit.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can only imagine. Did you want to give us more about that?
I will say, as Matt and I are standing off to the side, kind of behind a panel waiting, he was like walking me through breathing exercises. I cannot emphasize how nervous we all were going into this. But once you walked into the soundproof booth, it was honestly like your own little oasis. It truly was soundproof. And JC and Snow are absolute geniuses for having that component in there, because 1 second you had a room with over 100 people in it, and then the next you really could get into the zone pretty easily, and that was awesome.
Well, wow, I did not know you were in a soundproof room. So you go into this room, are you able to see out, or is it you're kind of segregated from the world and then people are just listening to the call, or how is that working?
Yeah, so it was, if you picture it, it was off to the front left of the room, and it was facing the back of the room, but it was off to the side, so you didn't see the crowd through the window. What you're looking at is a person they have for actually placing the phone calls, part of the social engineering community staff. And so from our perspective, when Sean and I first walked in, really we could see Matt and the staff member that was helping us place our calls. And you can't hear anything aside from the headset that they give you, and they could speak directly to the staff member, but outside of that, it's nothing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You can hear some of the crowd though when you get a flag and it goes, and the room will erupt, and you can hear just the faintest little like, in the background, like through the doors, but it's not much.
Okay, so you go into the booth with your objectives that you're going to be judged on, or what? Can you speak on that a little bit? I'm just curious on how this is actually judged and like what objectives you're actually looking for to get points.
Yeah, so I had a list of the objectives all out in front of me. So there is an overlap between the objectives that they required for the report ahead of time and for the objectives that you were going to obtain during the live calls, but there were slight differences. And the most fun part, I think I would say, they introduced new this year is the ability to have wardrobe changes. And you can also use background noises, and things like that would get you extra points from the judges. So in addition to the objectives, it was, the number of pretext you used per phone call, any background sounds, wardrobe changes. For example, Sean and I went into our booth first, and I was pretending to be an IT intern. So, I wore jeans, a funny IT catch shirt. I think I actually made a fake badge for our target company based on our OSINT, knowing what their badges look like with my name on it and my photo. And let's see what else. I think I had a fidget spinner as well. So things like that. And then I could speak to also just the general objectives that you get from on the call if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Yeah, so there's a list of, I think, 29, but there is things like, do they work from home or the office? Do they take social engineering training or security awareness training? Do they have security guards? If they do, what are their hours? What's the Wi-Fi SSID name? What VPN do they use? What operating system do they use? There's a large variety to these questions, which was particularly difficult, but because you have to find a pretext that can fit the most amount of information possible in there.
Yeah, that's talk about stressful in front of the crowd, and then going through that, man, I would have been with you. I'd need those breathing exercises.
I was gonna say you guys straight up sound like Superman. You've got wardrobe changes, you've got your OSINT badge stuff put together. So how did those things come into play when you get someone on the phone? What types of methodologies did you use to get them talking?
So what I found that worked was, so there's a couple parts to leading up to this. So we did a lot of work leading up to, DEFCON. There's like homework assignments more or less along the way and reports that were due. So you had to come up with pretext, which Jennifer covered. There's also a whole nother report that we do with some information in it that kind of shows that we're not just slacking off, and it's worth some points as well. The thing that worked out best was the amount of work put up front. Instead of asking someone what their antivirus is, getting them to confirm their antivirus is a better way to get a response from them. So, for example, like, hey, your computer has a McAfee on it, right? Blah, blah, blah. And they're going to say yes versus like, oh, if you had to approach it as, hey, what antivirus do you use? That's suspect. You're not an insider, right? You're someone that doesn't know. If you confirm to them that they should have this installed, a yes from them will get you points quicker than trying to pull a thread from them that they might not feel comfortable giving you.
Yeah, I think definitely to that point. Pretty much just to reiterate, pretty much every single flag that we got was just confirming what we had already found during our OSINT report. So first off, you ask them like, hey, your email address is this, right? And then they would say like, yeah, this is my email address, and that's one of the flags. And then like, okay, are you currently in the office, or are you currently at home right now? Like, oh, I'm at home right now. Like, okay, that's another flag, and kind of go from there, walk through each step, kind of confirming what we already found previously.
Yeah, and I think one thing that really helped us also new this year is JC and Snow introduced a component of having coaches that were available to contestants. And so we met with Corgi, and I'll give you guys her Twitter handle for after the show. And she offered to help us walk through our pretext. So we ran through our ideas for what our pretext might be and helped us pick which ones would be best. And emphasize the fact that you want to pick a pretext that will get you the most amount of information as possible, because what kills you in this competition is not getting people to answer the phone. Once you have someone on the phone, you need to make use of every single second you have them for. And so, and when we were practicing, actually my pretext, she gave an objection that I necessarily wasn't anticipating, but it helped me practice on the fly. And during the actual DEFCON live calling, I received that exact same objection from one of the callers. And so I was able to seamlessly just go through it because, you know, Corgi and I had already practiced it. So that was also a really helpful component this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because that was actually part of my next question was, you know, you're getting these people on the phone. Do you have what was your strategy to keep people on the phone? I know we've all made or a lot of us have made these phone calls before. You know, you get people that are super talkative that maybe are willing to give up this information and it's very natural. But then you get people that want to get off the phone and jump off, or how did that work? Were you able to utilize any strategies to keep them on the phone, or what was your goal there?
So with my phone call, I was the only one that got a little bit of pushback because of time of day. So my phone call was the last one, and it was definitely like someone just sub of C-level, right? So you can tell he's in a suit and ready to go home. So when I picked up the phone, I said, "Hey, I need to ask you some questions about, you know, your computer or whatever." And then he's like, "Really, man? Like it's end of day." Like he was not wanting to do this. And I said, "Perfect. It'll take just a few minutes." And then that was just kind of what led it on from that point, was just like, "I swear this will only take like 2 minutes of your time and I'm out of here. You're the last person on my list."
I'm curious, when you guys are employing these, like overcoming objections and working with someone, like the mental game, are you playing a character? Like, how do you get yourself ready mentally to look calm and composed, to be within this role? Like, tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I know a lot of people in the social engineering community, not specific to DEFCON, but just in general, people that practice social engineering really recommend doing things like improv. I've heard very great things about it. I personally never have. And so for me, instead of being in a character, I go in by over preparing for everything. So the people who I called, I knew absolutely everything I could find out about them. I knew what their family life was like. All of it. I knew what their job life was like based on their social media. And so I called people who were particularly wide open, so that, you know, I could pivot to something like something we have in common, or something that I know that they enjoy, so to build more rapport should I face some kind of hesitancy from their end. So, and that helps me feel more secure in the fact that, you know, I'm not going to bomb because I have a lot of different backup avenues to go.
Yeah, research, rapport, building that relationship, establishing that trust. Like, congratulations on the black badge, guys. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
How many phone calls did you guys make during the competition?
I think, Jennifer, you made 2 or 3 phone calls that you took up most of the time with 2 people. And then Sean, I think you made 1 or 2 as well.
Yeah, I think
I had one successful. Yeah, when it came down for me, I was going top to bottom on mine, and I just was not getting hits. And then I was surprised when the person who picked up the phone. I was like, "Oh crap!" Like, I thought we were just going to wear out the time at that point.
Yeah, I think we had how much time was on the clock to begin with? Was it 25 minutes? I think, or 30 minutes?
Yeah.
25. Yeah.
Yeah, and then by the time Jennifer's turn was done, we had all but like 7 minutes left on the clock, I think.
Well,
sounds about right.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are making it sound like I hogged the time. So what happened?
I was going to say it's because your girl killed it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well,
So
what's funny is her second call was an accident to some degree. We were going to actually go round robin, and her first phone call just killed. And then all of a sudden I realized it's my phone call. But to get the maximum points, I had to do a costume change real quick. And it wasn't one. We didn't want to have downtime. So I said, "Hey, make one more call. I'm going to go change real quick outside, come back in." Except her next phone call, she killed it. So, yeah. I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to tell her to stop, you know? So I hop back in the booth and we kind of have our little back and forth. And then, then it was leftover time, and that was then the last call I made after that.
It's incredible. And honestly, after being there, and seriously, when we say standing room only, this was one of the most popular events this year. I personally went in, watched in the morning, used the restroom, and sat in line for an hour and a half to get back in the room. So even you trying to navigate a costume change, getting out of that room, out of your booth and back in such a short amount of time is just a testament to how prepared you guys were and just completely badass.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was so much fun.
Nick, should we transition from DEFCON and maybe just talk about social engineering in general?
I think that's a good idea. I'd mentioned before that this is kind of something I'm really passionate about too. So I'm looking to pick your guys' brains on a few things. Just as, for example, like, when you're making these phone calls outside of the DEFCON competition, if you get somebody that's agnostic to the call, what kind of information can you still get from that person? Is that something you're going to just maybe ditch and hang up on? Or are you staying with that phone call and trying to still get more information to maybe continue down the rabbit hole? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so I would say specific to the DEFCON competition, if you get someone on the call, you need to use every single minute. And, you never just hang up because it's a lost cause unless it's truly a lost cause and they start to question you or they hang up themselves because the odds of you getting another person aren't necessarily in your favor. Outside of DEFCON and just in general for social engineering practices, I would say it's not always a lost cause for somebody who might seem as though they're disinterested. In fact, a lot of the times you can use that in your favor, saying things like, it's only going to take a few minutes of your time, and then emphasizing whatever benefit it will be to them. Because a lot of the times somebody doesn't want to be on the phone with you because they have other things to do. They don't want to spend their time talking to somebody about something when they have 50 other things they have to do before they leave for the day. So if you can emphasize how it's going to benefit them to talk to you for 5 minutes, you can get them to give you more information than you probably would have gotten otherwise.
And the biggest benefit to help you help them is to let them think they're helping you. So don't make it seem like you want to bark an order. Pretend that you are like they can help you with your task for the day. That was proving useful for Jennifer's pretext.
Yeah, I was just a lowly IT intern and I needed to check a box. Otherwise, I'd get in trouble.
Yeah, so you're trying to create that relatability to them. Yeah.
And a sense of urgency for yourself and your own livelihood, especially as you guys were talking and depending on what level of people you're engaging with. I think sometimes those who are in the most position of power are most empathetic to the lowly IT person and honestly just want to check this off their list to move on. And that's where we find our opportunity, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Jennifer, one of your pushbacks you got initially was like, the guy said, hey, I just got a new computer. I don't know if I'm the right person. And you said, well, hey, you're on my list. Do you mind if I ask you these questions anyways? That way, you don't keep getting these phone calls because you're just going to keep getting the phone calls. So that, kind of helps him out so he doesn't get annoyed in the future going forward,
Absolutely. Yeah, Matt, that's a great point. I guess for the audience, how could we better train somebody at a company to, spot somebody actually vishing them? Do you have any advice for a company? How would you train somebody? Or, is there anything that comes to the top of your mind?
Yes, definitely. Sean, go ahead.
A juicy one.
Yeah. So we saw a few of the good practices happen during some of the other phishing engagements or vishing engagements. For example, someone called this person from a non-VoIP phone, right, inside of their company, right? So they're getting a call from a stranger, and this person said, "Hey, let me look you up inside of our GAL or our internal person lookup." And that was one thing that stopped that call completely, was because the validation that number and that person did not exist would have been just a complete standstill, right? So that would be a slight technical implementation plus a user's awareness type of implementation as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I typically say first and foremost, avoid answering calls from numbers that you can't identify. When in doubt, just let it go to voicemail, and then you can listen to the message carefully. But a lot of times it's not necessarily practical. Maybe it's part of your job to answer unknown numbers. For example, someone in sales. So what I would recommend is pretending to be immediately busy and basically asking them for their callback number, asking them for their name and any other department or other information about them, and then hang up, say you're busy, you can't talk now, and then independently verify. So never call back the number that they actually give you. Go and research what it should be. So for example, if you get a call from somebody claiming to be from your bank, indicating that there's a fraudulent charge on your credit card and you need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure it's remedied. You say, okay, what department you're calling from, what's your name, and then you have to go. And you hang up, and then you go to your credit card and you look at the number on the back of the credit card that's meant for fraud, and you call that number. So never trust somebody who's calling you immediately. You have to verify who they are and search independently for that information. And sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, and kind of tie into that. And if there's usually a sense of urgency, it's probably fake.
Yeah, I mean, it can come in so many different forms. So scammers use things like deadlines, intimidation, and like Sean said, the sense of urgency, but they can also be very polite and confident in their way to trick you. And so if you think you're divulging too much information, you probably are, and just hang up. You could be polite to the person and say you have to go, but hang up is your best option. And from a training perspective, I recommend you train users to recognize all different types of information that is potentially sought after by bad actors. And most people know not to give their username and password to their personal accounts to somebody over the phone, but they may not know that it's also bad to give away things like physical building access details. Your supervisor's name, the department, all of that can be useful information for a bad actor. So, but it's not necessarily innately evil when somebody calls you and asks you that. It can seem very benign. So educating users of the potential use to that kind of information can be very beneficial to help them recognize if it's a phishing attempt.
This is all such valuable and good information. Those threat actors are trying to evoke an emotion, right?
Oh, yes, always.
Well, your strategies are impressive. Your award one is definitely something to be recognized. Before we wrap up today, we are curious, what is the craziest story you can share on the record? Is it something in your professional lives, social engineering, or doing it as a sport? Is it something from DEFCON? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I guess I got some more stories, I guess. So I was on a red team that hacked, how can I say this? That hacked non-commercial entities. And so they would send us out into the field and we'd be playing war games with military. And one time I was a human relay to perform this hack over like a radio frequency. So I'm crawling through some grass, and then all of a sudden I see like the camp of military, their lights light up. And I'm like, oh, I should probably get back to the car. Crawl my way back to the car, and we're sitting in an SUV, and all of a sudden a Hummer comes up right behind us, or it's just not a Hummer, it's anyways, big military vehicle, bigger gun on the back, and all of a sudden just starts lighting up the place. We didn't know it was fake rounds. So we're sitting in the car with this giant gun behind us shooting, and we thought we were just in the biggest world trouble. Turns out we weren't, but we had to sit there for 10 minutes while they had their war games go on and just be lit up by, gunfire all around us.
That's
terrifying.
Yeah, it didn't take too long to figure out if they were like fake rounds or blink rounds. Right. But, the first few, you're like, oh, this car can't handle this. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
I want to thank our guests, Jennifer @_jackoff, JACOFF Twitter handle, Sean @_chop, SEAHOP, and Matt @banger SEC. That's BNGRSEC if you want to get a hold of them. You've been listening to The Audit, and we thank you for joining us. If you want more information, please visit our website at itauditlabs.com. And we can't wait to chat with you guys again on the next podcast. Thanks, Team Spilt Beans. Great job this year.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Want security leadership without the headcount? As an extension of the team, IT Audit Labs will provide the experts to guide and counsel your company. We will start by creating a custom security program that caters to your industry while providing transparency and remediation to improve cyber posture while reducing risk. Contact IT Audit Labs to find out more.